I'm Betty Rowland, and I have worked in burlesque for many, many years, and I've been known as the Ball of Fire. And I am going to tell you all about burlesque.
Betty, you had a long career as a performer. What did you do?
I was a strip-tease dancer, for one, and also I had worked in vaudeville with my sister, Rose Zell. We did a vaudeville act before we went into burlesque. When we first started in vaudeville, we were 13 and 12, actually, and we worked in vaudeville probably about a year and a half. And we were with a big act that worked in big shows, and there was several sister team acts, and we went on the road with them, and we were chaperoned by one of the girls' mothers. And when the act broke up, my Roselle and I stayed on in Boston by ourselves, and it was very, very a lot of fun, but it was a lot of worry too. And we went back to work in some of the shows and some of the theaters that we had worked in with a big act before, and so they knew us and knew that we were quite capable of doing a pretty fair act as just the two of us. So we did that for a little while, and then there wasn't any more vaudeville, so we went into burlesque from there.
When you started in burlesque, it was the early 1930s and the Great Depression had taken hold of America. How did the Depression affect theatre and the arts and entertainment?
Well, the Depression had a great effect on the arts of theatres, but for one reason they couldn't afford to travel all those people anymore, like in Van Marco shows or big productions, and all those people were just out of work. So they went into smaller theaters, or they went into a burlesque. It came to be smaller instead of big productions. But we also got some good entertainers coming back into burlesque because of the fact that there wasn't any more vaudeville for them to work. So we did get some fine musicians also, and some great entertainers from vaudeville joined into burlesque.
Betty, could you describe a typical burlesque show?
The first act would be the curtain would open, and the chorus girls, the music playing, the chorus girls would be doing high kicks and nice little jazzy number, hi, hey, hey, and everybody happy. And then the beautiful showgirls, they would come out, parade around the runway, and a singer would be on the side singing a nice song for the girls to walk with. And then there would be some little, perhaps maybe a vaudeville act, a dance team that came out, maybe they did a tap dance or an acrobatic girl or something, but it would have to be fast. And then they would do a little reprise when the chorus girls would, everybody would dance together, close the curtain, and out would come a comic. Hi, everybody, you having fun, the girls, and this and that and the other. And they would do a scene, a comedy scene, and get everybody happy. Then after that, there would be the first strip-teaser would come on. They would introduce her on the mic. They would always, it would be a girl that hadn't done the strip before, probably, brand new, and they would introduce her as such, and she just came from Hoboken, maybe they would say, fresh from Hoboken, and here she is. Now, boys, be real nice. Here's a beautiful girl. Give her a big hand, and that would encourage her, and they'd all give a big hand here. And she would do her act, and then the curtain would, she would be down in one, and they would be setting up for a picture number in the back of the curtain, and that would be where they would do one of the pretty ballet numbers, what they would call a picture number, and it would be nice lights and everything, and like a swan number or something like that. And that would, the showgirls and the singer would probably open that number to set the pace for it, and then they would have the little dancing girls would come out and show how they could really do their little semi-ballet. It might be a water thing, and they'd be sitting around, do this, and the showgirls would parade around, and then your exotic girl would come on and do an exotic dance. This meant that she didn't take off any clothes or anything, and she probably did it would be maybe any kind of a foreign number, a Hawaiian number, Egyptian number, and that would be the exotic dancer girl. And then they all would get together after her dance, and she'd get her little applause, and the singer and the ballet tall girls walk around again, and then they close the curtain. And then they would bring on another, probably a solo singer, lady as a rule. She's the big prima donna of the show, and she would do a nice number. She would be introduced over the mic, and she would come out, and they would be forewarned that she is not going to do a strip-tease. One of our lovely, talented young ladies, and they would accent that word so that they would know that she's not going to take off her clothes, boys. So relax. And then she would do her song, and sometimes that girl would stop the show. She was a really good performer and would have to do an encore. And after her, then there would come because she would be out in one, then they would open up the curtain and do the big feature comedy act, where most everybody in the show was in it. And the comics ran around, and they did all kinds of funny things. It might be a hospital scene, it might be a schoolroom setup, or a boudoir setup, one of those three, or it could be a grocery store, any kind of a funny scene that they could get laughs out of. And then the curtain would close, and the showgirls would come out, walking out on the runway, and they would be talking on the microphone. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to bring to you what you've all been waiting to see, and that would be the star of the show.
And what would the star be doing?
And the star would be waiting for her fanfare to open the curtain and say hi, and give it a go.
And then what?
And then after that would be the finale. She does her act, and they hoop it up, and hopefully a lot of applause, maybe an encore, all set with a band that she would do an encore. And then the voice comes over the microphone, and they introduce everybody, the chorus girls first, and then the parade girls, and then they introduce each one of the performers. And then last but not least would be the star of the show. And they dim the lights, and she comes parading around once more, up and down the runway, and that's it.
So that star was the strip-teaser then, was she?
Oh, yes.
So the stripper was considered the star of the show in burlesque?
Yeah, they usually would say, it's what you've been waiting for, the girl you've been waiting to see.
Could you describe the acts of some of the big strip-teasers when you were in your heyday, for instance, Gypsy or Margie Hart?
Gypsy Rose Lee used to wear like a kimono-type gown, and she had straight pins all the way from around about the knee, clear up to her chest, and she would do a little talking number and a little singing before she went into her act. You know, talk to the boys she always talked to, and how is everything going, boys? Oh, I remember him, and you know, little things like that. Oh, you are here again. Ah, now I knew it was Wednesday when you were here. It is Wednesday, isn't it? You know, yeah, it's Wednesday. And she would do things like that, and then she would bend over. She said, well, I guess I better get to work, and hey, yes, she better get to work. And she would bend over and start taking out the little straight pins out of her costume, and just hold it like that and throw it at the drummer, and the drummer would catch it with his cymbals. Bing! And then she would go along and take a little break. Bing! We want some more ping! You know? And she would take maybe 3 or 4 of them out and go bing, 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 and then get right about to her knee, and then she would slow down a little bit again. She did a real tease. She teased on the tease. She'd have more fun putting the strap down and putting it back up, and she could get more of an audience doing that. Because she's very clever. She's very tall, gorgeous black hair and great big eyes. She's really beautiful.
Did you ever work with Gypsy?
Yes, we worked with Gypsy at the Irving Place. She was one of the stars of the show when my sister and I were there in the chorus and doing our vaudeville act. Also, she was the star of the show at that time.
Now, Margie Hart was very much a different performer from Gypsy Rose Lee.
Completely different.
Why?
Marjorie was like what they said, she was hot and they knew that she was going to go a little bit further than most of the gals went, because she had some little tricks of her very own, that nobody knew exactly what she was doing, and she drove the guys crazy.
So she'd be
little tricks with her costumes, mostly her little undies.
Would she be flashing the audience?
We were never sure. But she always made them think they were sure going to.
Now, just describe the laws at the time, because I know that stripteasers weren't allowed to be nude on stage, were they?
No, we had to wear pasties. And either pasties or net bras with pasties on. They had to have little colorful deals around the color part of the nipples.
So you weren't allowed to show your nipples then?
No.
Was this a rule or a law that you weren't allowed to wear?
Very, very strict rules. And the spotlight man, if you went like this and turned around and didn't have them on, he blacked out the light. And you stood out there in the dark, so you better have them on.
Who was policing the fact that the stripteasers might not be wearing the correct costumes?
The stage manager, who was backstage all the time, standing and giving the cues to the man to pull the curtain, and cues for the lights, and he saw everything that went on. And if you might pick up by maybe an accent, but don't let it happen again, because you'll be violating your contract. Because it says in your contract the rules of whatever the theater has, that's what you must abide by. And not just to get a little extra applause and something like that, and be competition to another girl in the show. Everybody had to do the same.
Who set the rules in the first place?
The censorship of the town, wherever you were playing.
So there was an actual person called a censor?
Yes, there were several of them. They would catch the shows from time to time. And sometimes they would come up to the box office, and the box office girl wouldn't know who he was. And you just buy a ticket like everybody else and see what was going on. See if they were abiding by the rules.
Oh, that must have been a good job to have then.
Yeah. Sometimes they came back too. I think they liked that job rather well.
So what led you to become a stripteaser?
Well, it was probably quite by accident in a way, because I never really strived to say I want to be a stripteaser, not even when I was in burlesque. I was happy working in the chorus and doing specialties and you know, having a job, but I could see that was getting a little bit stale, and you must try to be a stripper, or you're going to be in the chorus for the rest of your life, or as long as you could do your kicks. And so it looked a little bit easier because you didn't have all the rehearsals that the girls have. And so when I had an opportunity, they needed a girl to do the first strip, why I volunteered, and Mr. and Mrs. yeah, that's just fine, she can do it.
So tell me about that first strip. How scared were you, or how prepared were you?
I was not really prepared. I thought I was, but when I got out there in the spotlight by myself, and knowing where hooks and eyes were, and I had, my costume was just a bit much. I had a feather boa, I had a hat, I had gloves, and I was used to dancing when the spotlight hit me, and I had a little trouble dancing with all those things on, and I forgot to take off things. I think I got my gloves off and a hat, but I don't think I got much further than that. And my music was all over. I had danced it all out.
So you didn't do a strip in your first strip?
No, I
Tell me how you felt when you were out there on the stage, knowing you had to start undressing in front of an audience of mainly men.
I wasn't thinking about that at all, strange as it may seem. It was an act, you know, because that's what they were. You do your act, you do your act. And we never really discussed it as being anything sexy, or the men were there. It was just part of what you do. And tease and get as much applause as you can out of them by just doing this and doing that.
Did you have a gimmick or a stage name?
My gimmick stage name was given to me as Ballfire because of my red hair, and I moved a little quicker than most people. And they said, oh, she's a regular Ballfire, and the light they put on made my hair flaming red. And so I guess that's where I got that. You're a regular Ballfire out there. And that, he said that, and he said, put that in the paper, he said, next week. And it caught on. I thought it was rather corny the first time I heard it. Ballfire don't sound very sexy.
What was your gimmick? Did you have one?
No, I don't think I really had a gimmick. Gimmick was me out there. I was a pretty good teaser. And then I had some other different little numbers, talking numbers that I used to do, like my bumps in the ballet.
Yeah, just what was your bumps in the ballet act?
Bumps in the ballet act was I came out and the chorus girls would be in back of me and doing a little, like they were doing ballet, you know, and I would see that and, you know, sort of say, oh, well, you know, and had a lyric that went with it. And at the end I would say, so do you mind if I put a bump in this ballet? I spoofed the ballet, actually. And then the curtain would close, and then I did my bumps, mixed up with the ballet.
So bumping is a strip-tease move, then?
Yes.
Could you explain that? What's a bump?
A bump is, I guess Fatima probably is the first one that ever did bumps and grinds in all of her dancing.
And what are bumps and grinds?
And it's a gyration of the hips. Seems like in Hawaii, girls in Hawaii, it's a bump and grind. Actually, they do. And they do the shimmy, which is done by the ball of the foot. Shakes everything up.
Were you ever arrested by the police? Did you ever do anything that was against the law in burlesque?
I probably did. But I did get arrested in Los Angeles, California. It was a little unusual because I'd been doing that dance in and around LA for quite a few years. That I should get arrested was very strange. As a matter of fact, when they brought me in, and the man at the desk says, my goodness sakes, LA must be very clean and there must be nothing going on or you bring Betty in here. And so it was really a very situation, but it started with the manager at the box office, and he took me because that was the only way he could arrest the manager was to have a reason, and I was it.
Why did they want to arrest the manager, though?
Well, the manager had been rather terse to the Vice Squad man as he walked in the theater. And they had a little confrontation out there, and that was, he said, well, I'll go in whenever I please. And he said, no, you have to buy a ticket the same as everybody else. And it was an ugly little conversation that they had. So I'll show you. So he came back there, and he watched my act from the wings. I saw him there, but I just did what I usually do. But he found something that he thought I was doing wrong, and so just arrested me.
And what happened? Did they fine you, or what happened to you?
Well, they took me down there to the to jail, and of course I was immediately gotten out, you know, by the management of the theater. Came down and bailed me out, and so they wound up in court, and they had a jury, and some had never even seen a burlesque show before, and they had an idea that it was not even licensed or anything, and it was illegal. They didn't really pick on my dancing, but they just said burlesque is illegal. And they'd never seen a show or didn't know anything about it.
What did the jury find you guilty of?
They found me guilty of lewd behavior.
So the jury found you guilty of lewd behavior?
Yeah.
Were you fined, or what happened to you?
Well, when the jury found me guilty, then it was up to the judge to sentenced me. And he sentenced me to 3 months, and he said I was lewd and I was a detriment to the world, and anybody that went to see those shows was an absolute idiot, and they had no business being in there, and it should be closed, and I should be sentenced to 3 months in jail.
But you hadn't done anything wrong.
No, it wasn't. Nothing I did wrong was proven. Burlesque was illegal, that's why they said they found it guilty. But he still put me in there for 3 months, he sentenced me to. So of course I had the time off for 3 months appeal. I was out for 3 months to appeal. And when the appeal came up that it could not be changed, they said the reason, my attorney found out the reason it couldn't be changed because they did that, there were so many girls that had been arrested for various things, and they would have to appeal theirs too, and it would be a big rigmarole. So they could not appeal it. So after 3 months, I had to go in and surrender, which I did. I went in after 3 months and surrendered. And while I was around in those 3 months, I got word from a certain bail bondsman came to me and wanted to know if I would pay $5,000, and they would, I disappear, and they would not take me in after the appeal.
And who were you supposed to pay the $5,000 to?
The judge.
So that judge that sentenced you blackmailed you?
Yeah, that's right.
What was the name of the judge that did this?
The name of the judge was Byron Walters. And I got a lot of letters in the paper. Paul Coates wrote a column, and he could not understand why the judge had called everybody that had ever seen a burlesque show crazy, and that they were lewd people and they were terrible, because some wonderful people. He said, I see the burlesque shows myself, and he says, I would attend them with my wife. We love the comics and a lot of the shows and get a big kick out of the girls taking off their clothes. And he says, I didn't see anything that it's an adult entertainment. And several other people also wrote it up that it was really a bad thing, because they knew me, and I'd been in town for so long, and they knew that I really was a good dancer, and I must have cooperated with them on the rules and regulations. Otherwise, I certainly would have been arrested before that.
Los Angeles apparently was very corrupt, wasn't it, in the 1950s?
Yes, definitely corrupt.
You were
a patsy. I heard that the judge had been a gambler and he needed money real bad. And he saw the opportunity.
When and why did burlesque entertainment end?
In my opinion, burlesque ended, or it was starting to end, in the television, because there's entertainment at home and they didn't have to go out to see it. And they had a lot of the same people from burlesque were going into television and doing acts, and the people that owned the theaters, they were cutting down the bands because they were not getting the people coming into it as much. And people that owned the theaters were more or less selling out because they could see the picture, you know. This isn't going to last anymore. It's all over. So people went to do other nightclubs and television. It's separated. The strippers went into the strip clubs, and the comics went into the comic clubs. They were no longer together. And where the chorus girls went, I don't know, a lot of them became waitresses in the nightclubs, and cocktail waitresses, and made their money. I guess some of them, they didn't have to rehearse anymore. Didn't have to go in there in the daytime, and they made pretty good money, cocktail waitresses. And they wore cute little costumes, and most of them had a nice little personality, and it all helped. So they made a good living in the nightclubs. But it was all separated, so there's no more burlesque. A comedy show and a strip show.
So what made you finally retire from burlesque?
When I got married. And I stayed out. I was out of And then when I got my divorce, I went back and worked into some others.
So what made you finally retire from burlesque then?
From burlesque, because there was no more burlesque. Burlesque retired all of us. We had no place to go. And there was even sometimes there had been schools of burlesque to teach younger girls how to do strip because it looked like a good business. But by the time they got to know what they were doing, well, there wasn't any more burlesque. And they came into the go-go dancers. They did the go-go dancing. And that took over a little bit. But it was not together anymore. All separated. So if you want to see strippers, you go see 10 of them. If you want to see comics, you go see a bunch of them. It's not going to be mixed up. You're going to get tired of laughing, and if you get tired of saying, take it off, take it off. So that more or less is disappearing too. So there's no more tease to it at all. So it's all different kind of dancing, up and down the poles and lap dancing and whatever they want to do. But I guess the public demands it, I don't know. It's kind of difficult to figure it out. It's all the same. Girls, pretty girls and funny boys. Hand, and that would encourage you, and it'll all get a big hand here. And she would do her act, and then the curtain would, she would be down in one, and they would be setting up for a picture number in the back of the curtain, and that would be where they would do one of the pretty ballet numbers, what they would call a picture number, and it would be nice lights and everything, and like a swan number or something like that, and that would, the showgirls and the singer would probably open that number to set the pace for it. And then they would have, the little dancing girls would come out and show how they could really do their little semi-ballet. It might be a water thing. And they'd be sitting around, do this, and the showgirls would parade around. And then your exotic girl would come on and do an exotic dance. This meant that she didn't take off any clothes or anything. And she probably did the I'm Betty Rowland, and I have worked in burlesque for many, many years, and I've been known as the Ball of Fire. And I am going to tell you all about burlesque.
Betty, you had a long career as a performer. What did you do?
I was a strip-tease dancer, for one, and also I had worked in vaudeville with my sister, Rose Zell. We did a vaudeville act before we went into burlesque. When we first started in vaudeville, we were 13 and 12, actually, and we worked in vaudeville probably about a year and a half. And we were with a big act that worked in big shows, and there was several sister team acts, and we went on the road with them, and for the girls to walk with. And then there would be some little, perhaps maybe a vaudeville act, a dance team that came out, maybe that did a tap dance or an acrobatic girl or something, but it would have to be fast. And then they would do a little reprise when the chorus girls would, everybody would dance together and close the curtain, and out would come a comic. Hi, everybody, you having fun, the girls, and this and that and the other. And they would do a scene, a comedy scene, and get everybody happy. Then after that, there would be the first strip-teaser would come on. They would introduce her on the mic. They would always, it would be a girl that hadn't done the strip before, probably, brand new, and and they would introduce her as such, and she just came from Hoboken, maybe they would say, fresh from Hoboken, and here she is. Now boys, be real nice, she's a beautiful girl, give her a big more, like in Van Marco shows or big productions, and all those people were just out of work. So they went into smaller theaters, or they went into a burlesque. It came to be smaller instead of big productions. But we also got some good entertainers coming back into burlesque because of the fact that there wasn't any more vaudeville for them to work. So we did get some fine musicians also, and some great entertainers from vaudeville joined into burlesque.
Betty, could you describe a typical burlesque show?
The first act would be the curtain would open, and the chorus girls, the music playing, the chorus girls would be doing high kicks and nice little jazzy number, hi, hey, hey, and everybody happy. And then the beautiful showgirls, they would come out, parade around the runway, and a singer would be on the side singing a nice song. We were chaperoned by one of the girls' mothers. And when the act broke up, by Rose Zell and I stayed on in Boston by ourselves. And it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of worry too. And we went back to work in some of the shows and some of the theaters that we had worked in with a big act before. And so they knew us and knew that we were quite capable of doing a pretty fair act as just the two of us. So we did that for a little while, and then there wasn't any more vaudeville, so we went into burlesque from there.
When you started in burlesque, it was the early 1930s and the Great Depression had taken hold of America. How did the Depression affect theatre and the arts and entertainment?
Well, the Depression had a great effect on the arts of theaters, but for one reason they couldn't afford to travel all those people anymore.